6
Okay.
on the dot.
Okay, then let's start. Dr. Nair?
Yeah, good. Good morning, Patricia and Haem, and good evening to all others. Warm welcome to the World Trade Center. It is the second webinar in the series of international branding for SMEs we are doing jointly with Karnvir, and it's a great feedback what we are getting it from the Indian SMEs, and it's the first seminar also very well attended. And just to give you a brief introduction of the World Trade Center to the faculty, see, the World Trade Center is a license what we issued by the World Trade Centers Association, New York. And we have in Canada, we have nearly 8 World Trade Center, Winnipeg, Toronto, they all are very active in Halifax. And in UK, we have Gibraltar, and the WTC London. And Brazil, we have 5 World Trade Center. Sao Paulo World Trade Center is one of the prominent World Trade Center in our family. And this program, Mr. Karnvir is taking care of the complete introduction of the, the faculty, the eminent faculties who are the brand gurus, plus the moderating the session. I request Karnvir to take it forward and start the session. Please, Karnvir.
So hi everyone, and welcome to another session of how to build brand. How can the SMEs build brands? And today we are I don't know whether to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, because we are spanning across the world in our in our meet today. We have right from Canada 8:30 a.m. in the morning, but Brazil 9:30 a.m. in the morning. UK 1:30 p.m. and over here in India 6 p.m. in the evening. So we are kind of spanning the world in terms of essentially what we also want to do as a brand, span the world in terms of our brand. So just as an introduction, we have some really interesting people over here, and their resumes probably only scratch the surface of the iceberg, but I'll try to go over them. So we have Haem over here in the polka dotted, if I'm correct, blue shirt, and she is from Canada. She's a creative strategist. She's a marketeer. She's a content expert. With extensive experience across Canada, US, and India. And Haem has worked both on the creative as well as business side and led all aspects of strategy, branded content, pitching, execution, optimization on all platforms. And she's worked with all different kinds of brands like Star India, Mercedes, Blender's Pride. And she's now part of Toronto-based improvisation. She's also part of a Toronto-based comedy troupe called Eyesore, and is an experienced scuba diver. She writes poetry and she does short fiction. So she's done all. She has all this, all rolled into one. So that's Haem for you, right from Canada. Welcome to the event, Haem.
Thank you, Karnvir. And I'm just gonna say it's Haem.
Haem, sorry, Haem. I keep getting that wrong. And then we have Patricia Weiss from Brazil. Patricia has got another extremely long resume. She's the head of branded content and the strategic consultant for branded storytelling, brand purpose, culture at ASAS Brazil. She's also chairwoman of the Branded Content Marketing Association for South America. She's an advisory group board member. She's a lecturer on branded content. She's also on the advisory board council member of Women in Marketing for ORG UK. She's a lecturer, creator, coordinator for a course on branded content. She has taught in countries like France, Italy, Mexico, and curator and creator of the first branded content and branded storytelling post-graduation course in Brazil. She's also a judge at branded content festivals and 32 years in marketing and advertising business. I'm going to paste this all these resumes in the chat window because it's impossible for me to speak everything that's included over here, or for all of you to remember all that I'm mentioning. So I'm just going to paste it. And so welcome, Patricia. Thank you so much for coming on this event. I know it's really early again over there in Brazil. So welcome, Patricia. And we have Sam. Sam Knowles is has again so many aspects. He's one of the his resume doesn't say this, but he's also an expert in languages, including Sanskrit. And he is a data storyteller and the founder of a company called Insight Agents. And he has got more degrees than probably people do in their in 3 lifetimes. He's an established and sought after trainer, speaker, podcaster. He's the co-founder and co-host of a podcast called the Small Data Forum. He's also chair of the ICOM's Data Storytelling Council. But most recent, he is the author of the critically acclaimed book Narrative by Numbers: How to Tell Powerful and Purposeful Stories with Data, and another book which came out this year, which was How to Be Insightful: Unlocking the Superpower That Drives Innovation. So these are the, I mean, really interesting books. And me, I am your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man around in India. I am the founder and chief ideation officer at Atharva Marcom, which is in one of India's, at least I think so, one of the best public relation and communications firms. And I was asked what I do so often, so I decided to just adopt the tagline, "We make you famous," which put a halt to me explaining all the digital marketing, public relations, reputation management, creating press releases, and the multiple other concepts to people. But apart from that, I'm one of India's oldest continuously podcasting broadcaster, and started in 2006 when I turned my passion from being a radio jockey to online with the Health Tips podcast. And now also I do another show called on brands, which is called The Future of Branded Content Marketing and PR, which is also the official podcast of the BCMA. As an ego boost, but of little other consequence, I created a world record of sorts, which is the most viral, the most viral post in LinkedIn ever, which is right now at around 1.8 million views. So talk to me if you'd like to reach out to your customers better, faster, and with less boredom, or if want to be valued at 3 times of what you are right now. So that's a little introduction of all of us who are going to be over here talking about brands and branding. So to start with, I'll go with Haem, and have her talk about let her give her perspective about SMEs in Canada, and how what is her perspective on how they can build their brand in Canada, and her perspective of SMEs. Over to you, Haem.
I thank you, Karnvir. Yeah, same. I think the easy way to remember is that it rhymes with name. That's the best way to remember it. In terms of SMEs, I think one should remember it doesn't matter whether it's Canada, India, USA. Having worked across markets, one thing I realize is, like Sam had earlier mentioned, it's about the human connection. It's about understanding what your consumer wants and moving from there, right? So that's the most important thing for any business, especially when you're small. You have the advantage of being able to connect locally, being able to understand your exact audience, and then working from there, because you don't have a large organization, you don't have red tape, you don't have all of that to navigate with. You have your very specific product, and then you have your audience. And those are the most two important things, in my opinion, that you should remember. The first step is know who it is that you're talking to. What is it that they want? And then build your strategy around that. I have listed down about 6 points that I think are the most important for any business to keep in mind. The first point is to building a community. Build a content community. Right? Canadian brands, for example, direct-to-consumer brands are finding success thanks to content. There are brands like ND Mattresses. There are brands like Knix, which is an underwear brand for women that has been specially created. All of these brands are going direct to consumer, and they're finding success because they're creating this sort of environment where stories can be shared. They're taking stories of their consumers and they're putting it on their websites. They're taking stories and putting it on their social media. Their ads are about real stories, right? It's about authenticity, understanding what people want and going from there and making consumers part of your world. So it's not about, oh, there's a model that looks so great and that model is different from your consumer. Maybe that consumer can be reflected in what you do so that they feel that I'm represented. So that's one important part. Build that community with your audience, build that connection with your audience. The second point is customizations and one-on-one engagement. So are you listening to your consumer demands? Are you really listening? And what are you doing with that? Are you building that local connection? For example, get a local event and get people together around that, right? Connect with your local communities. Sport Check, for example, did something in Canada, which was they created a digital window shopping experience. I will post a link on that later because it's a lot to explain. But again, they connected with consumers on a very one-on-one level. They tried to create engagements. They tried to do customizations. They actually went and looked at carts of people that people had not checked out online during e-commerce. And then they took those carts and created customized ads across. So all their advertising on search and social media was based on that. So they're taking what people are actually looking for and creating something customized, building a one-on-one engagement with it. The next part would be, the third part would be information and resources. So are you giving something useful to people? This is very important, especially if you're a B2B SME brand. So give them resources, right? Create something that's useful to them. Create a white paper, have seminars, have information out there, do blogs, do content. Branded content holds a very key part here. Again, in Canada, we have brands like FreshBooks who are doing a really good job of that by connecting to their B2B consumers and then understanding those consumers and giving them resources that they can use for their business. It tells your target audience and consumers that we get you. We get what you're trying to say. The fourth point is brand values. So especially in today's time, brand values hold a very key part for any brand. What are you standing up for? What is your value? Are you speaking up and making a change? Black Lives Matter is important. So what are you doing about it? Are you just putting up a post that says Black Lives Matter, or are you actually making a difference? And how are you making a difference? Remember, it may not directly sell your product, but that's okay. It's okay to not always plug your product. It's important to tell the story. It's important to connect because that's what people will remember. They will not remember you mentioning this is my product 5 times in an ad, but they will remember if you start saying a story that they really feel about. Pick up a social issue that really works for them, right? And then donate to a community around you. Do something, do an event, hold some sort of, gathering to help them. There are, recently in Canada, there was a campaign called Go Back to Africa. It was by a company called Black and Abroad, and it took that phrase and it turned it around on its head. So it took that phrase, which is so racist, and it just flipped it around and made it positive. It promoted African tourism. It took that phrase on social media wherever people posted it, and instead of that, it posted positive ads for it. So again, you're taking something and then you're turning it on its head, and it's positive, it's happy. People care about it, they will remember it, right? So that's very important to have a value for your brand. And the next thing I would say is technology. There is so much technology out there. Are you using it? Are you using it to drive engagement? And when I say technology, I'm going to umbrella it with social media also. So let me give you a few examples. QR codes. I know some people say they're redundant, but there was a company called, there's a beer company in Canada that used QR codes on their beer cans and then used that to tell the story. So it was a can called Big in Japan, and it used the QR codes to tell the story of songs that were big in Japan first, international songs, so American songs, and then they came to the US. So people are looking at that, they're engaging with it, they want to know what's there. So they're using a simple technology to do something big. Pizza, which is a pizza brand, engaged consumers on TikTok. I know in India right now, TikTok is on sort of iffy territory, but doesn't mean that on other platforms don't exist. Virtual reality costs not a lot these days. So if cost is a barrier, you can find ways to navigate that, because I understand SMEs don't always have the financial resources to do it. Find out what you can do within your resources and try and see if you can use technology to drive engagement, generate leads for you. Because the moment people start engaging with you, you have an active lead and you have someone you can engage with and then go back to them. Even something as simple as Google search, if that's what you're doing, right? How are you customizing it? Are you just putting keywords there and targeting ads, or are you taking each keyword, creating a customized text ad for that keyword, and then connecting it to a landing page that's customized for your consumer, or maybe a video that's customized to your consumer? You're closing that entire loop. And that's, again, it's branded content, it's content strategy, and it works because you're doing more than just saying, here's my product, buy it, right? And that's not good enough. No one will buy it. But if you talk about, hey, you know what, let me listen to your story. Let me see what you're talking about. And let's see how my product can be a part of your life. That's something that people will listen to. So again, coming back to 5 points in my head, according to me, build a content community, customize and build one-on-one engagement, give them information, give them resources, stand up for something, show what your brand value is about. And 5, use technology, use what you have at hand to build all of that engagement and connect with your user and generate leads. That's
Wow, that was really good actually. You know, I'm glad you made all those points, because these are points which kind of I fight to explain to many of our prospective clients all the time. You know, like just today, I was having a conversation with somebody who asked me that, you know, I want to see results right away. I want to see results from day one. And you know, I try to explain to them. For instance, I said, you know, I'm doing this radio show, a podcast, which I have 50,000 listeners, and every show of mine doesn't exactly generate, results or clients or exactly money in the bank. But honestly, I mean, one of the reasons why I'm here on this, one of the many reasons I'm probably on this moderating this is because somebody probably heard some or came to know about some of the things that we've been doing. So every little drop, and one of the homework which I have put out for many of our clients is go home and just do a 2-minute video of yourself talking about why you started the company. That's all. That's all. I mean, no fancy graphics, nothing. Just look into your mobile camera and tell the world why you started a nuts and bolts factory. And there must be a reason behind it.
If I may say something to that, yeah, I mean, results. I understand from a business perspective, it's important to bring in revenue. But the way I've always explained to clients and anyone who asks is, forget you're the client, forget it's your brand. Go back and start thinking if you're the consumer. Imagine a product you use daily. Now you're going in your car, and this is, for example, when I was back in radio and trying to sell, radio to clients and pitch content to them. I said, switch on the radio. Now imagine an ad that comes there. And within that ad, you have someone saying, buy this product. This product is so amazing. This product is brilliant. It's so cool. Will you switch off the channel? Will you get annoyed? You will. I can guarantee you, you will. So do you want someone else to be annoyed by your brand like that? No. Now imagine someone comes on radio and they're telling you a story where the product is just by the by, but you're driving by every day and listening to it every single day. Within a week, you will remember it.
Absolutely.
What content is about. It's not about buy it now. No, it's about building it in your mind, building that connection and getting together with the consumer. And next time they go to the store, they're like, wait, I remembered this package. I remembered this ad. Let me try it now. And then
Absolutely.
So if your product is really bad,
which I think is really smiling is Patricia over here, because I think she really connects to all that you said, because in some ways Brazil and India and it has similar context of SMEs and small businesses and together. So Patricia, tell us your perspective about the SME story, how you handle them, your advice to them in Brazil.
Well, wise enough, it was Haem, right? Haem. Wonderful speech, and it was so. I will try to add something here because Haem was amazing, and I completely agree with her. And I do believe that the future, or the kind of new normal that we used to talk a lot about, it's happening already, and is about people-centered. So everything is changed because the human behavior is changed. So people are seeking for relevant and meaningful contents today. So I believe that the virus, this pandemic moment we are all living through, transforms and evidences the imbalance and inequality of society, institutions, and brands, as well as personal relations, revealing the truth, making us to choose better with whom we want to spend our time, with what we want to spend our time, and even buying something. So we were living in a model before all that crazy times that we are living through. We were living in a model of life based on excess. The pandemic can teach us to dispense what is superficial, recognize and privilege what is essential. Wise brands are those that are giving protagonism to people, not talking about themselves the whole time, even before the pandemic, but about what is really important for people now and for society. So we have been seeing many huge brands and also medium and small brands, even before the pandemic, starting to talk about something that is more meaningful, that can make some difference in people's lives. So brands should focus less on speaking of them or selling something only and talking about them, but on caring and helping people effectively now at this moment. So taking care of each other and sense of community for brands, in my opinion, should be the two important drivers at this moment. Even if the brand is don't use to talk about their purpose, but searching for meaningful conversation and adding value in people's lives, not talking only with customers, but talking with people. So it's about finding that perfect meeting between brand purpose and what is important to people. Because good stories, actually, it doesn't matter the size of the company, are bigger than products, and they help to humanize brands. Brands must address the truth with honesty, with amplitude and depth, because this is what really matters to people today. Taking over the moral duty to represent the society and dare to transform culture and old concepts of society and very old values. Because what really matters isn't what or how brands do, but why. Why is everything? That's the essence of everything. Why this brand is selling this or talking this. So we, as the audience, we won't forget what makes sense for each one of us, because this is the meaningful thing. This is more human-centered. So purpose is not related to what is branding, because it is connected to permanence, in my opinion. It is not connected only with the now thing. It does not change from year to year. Brand purpose means legacy. it builds legacy and creates a future for brands today. So I believe that brand purpose is that powerful meeting between the brand's vocation and the needs of the world. So it's not easy, it's a challenging thing when a brand should find this north, this key drive to talk to society, to build their future. And when we look at the brand's perspective, it's very important to understand something that I keep talking in my day by day. The big marketing revolution happens when a brand really puts itself in people's shoes. So this is not like to understand what is trending now, like to understand how the customer is buying something, but is really trying to discover what affects people's emotion, what is a social and cultural tension on that region, that country, that city. So embracing the commitment to represent society and acting. So brands should act as a catalyst, not the owner, but a catalyst of a broader conversation that is more people-oriented and less product-oriented only. And telling stories where the hero and protagonist is the audience, not the brands. So it means a new mindset. This is not only happening now, even in Brazil and South America, where we have a region that is so advertising oriented and buying media, and everything is about impact to talk to more than 200 millions. Brands are understanding that they have to bring meaningful conversations and attitudes. It can't be just a good, very brand storytelling project or something with a more human-centered approach if the brand is not keeping the consistency. So consistency is everything and is totally related to the brand truth. And when you look at Instagram, for example, in terms of SMBs, we are seeing a revolution happening here in Brazil and South America, in the whole Latin America, where people who used to own their businesses on Instagram to engage a little bit and to show, to explain with some tutorials about their products and with a very good website and a even very good physical store, it's over. It's over because they lost everything. They had to close their physical stores, and the website was not working enough. And people are in the whole world are afraid of going out, afraid of buying a lot because employees are losing their jobs, and we know this is happening in the whole world. But I see that SMBs are dedicating more and more time to produce lives. We can see lives inside the refrigerators now, almost. We open to get the water, the milk, and we see a life happening. But the lives are very important because it brings a lot of authenticity by the small and medium brands, a lot of proximity and intimacy with a lot of truth happening in this conversation. So they are producing a lot of lives. They are producing video tutorials on IGTV, on stories, with a huge creativity happening. So it's amazing to see. Every day I used to check and I feel just like, wow, it's amazing because we see creativity, we see high quality of content happening. They are producing at their houses. They are producing with some magic things happening, but with a very human-centered talking, bringing value. The conversation with people from other cities and cultures, they are starting to demonstrate that they want to know better their customers. So it's a very new positioning. This is not that old one, so come and buy something that I'm selling to you. No, I have to be meaningful and relevant on your day by day. So they have been trying to increase sales, but we have like outstanding projects. For example, with a lot of diversity, like there is a GG Rai store. It's like a plus size lingerie underwear for women that is amazing here in Brazil. And during the pandemic, Aline is the name of the girl behind the brand. She invested in the production of content to get even closer to her public through lives and most diverse themes, talking about mental health, yoga, and everything around what is important for people now. Not only about the products. So
No,
this is the magic.
In fact, being meaningful. In fact, being meaningful is one of the most key things which we have seen. You know, how soon have brands got created, and how soon have they died? Is one of the best examples in this pandemic. For instance, look at Zoom. You know, 4 months ago, you would have not. Most people would have not heard of the brand called Zoom. You know, today everyone knows what Zoom is, and in the moment a drug gets created, you know, hydrochloroxin, I can't even pronounce it completely, but everybody probably knows there's a certain drug which, you know, can benefit them. So brands have really, and even other brands like hotel brands, they have tried to pivot themselves to make themselves more meaningful, because if they just remained as a hotel, they would be forgotten. So today they are quarantine hospitals. Today they are providing food services to the home, and suddenly they're trying to reinvent themselves as a brand. And in fact, you know, one of the people who I think would really be able to put a lot of content or focus on this would be Sam over here, who has done so much of work on brands and is the author of 2 books. The latest one is Bang behind him, you know, right in view. But he's got a whole lot of experience and degrees and writings to talk about. So Sam, I'd like to bring you into the conversation to talk about your experience about brands and you know, what SMEs and what you actually, your latest book is about being insightful. So I would like to turn the question a little bit and say, how can SMEs be more insightful? Because you've just written a whole book on it.
Very good. Thank you very much. What an amazing amount of stuff from both Patricia and from Haem to violently agree with. Do you know what? Nobody's mentioned the C word so far. We've had the P word 3 times in pandemic, but no one said coronavirus. So I'll say coronavirus and COVID-19. And I think, you know, it's very, very interesting. You build this session as being SME branding in the new normal. I think that phrase has worn out. I think it should be the next normal rather than the new normal, because we still don't know. There are still so many of these Rumsfeldian unknown unknowns about the way that the world is going to emerge, but so much to agree with. I mean, Patricia, when you're talking about what brands need to do in the creation of the content is to put themselves into the minds, into the shoes, the mindsets. I think one of the it's not a definition of insight, but one of the really good ways of understanding what insight can do for brands is to think of insight almost as empathy. So this ability to understand the lives of consumers. I'm not going to answer your question immediately, Karnvir. I just want to talk a little bit about the way that many brands, SMEs and also bigger brands, have responded in the pandemic. And I think it reveals a couple of things that sort of surprised me, because I don't know if any of you have seen, they've been shared very widely. Mark Ritson, the Anglo-Australian marketing professor, shared a compilation of ads that bigger and smaller brands made kind of at the beginning of the pandemic, and you couldn't tell the brands apart. So there would be some modern classical music, usually I now know, there'd be modern classical music, it would be down tempo, we've been with you through the tough times, we'll be with you still, and then it got a bit more up tempo at the end, and we're here for the long term. You couldn't tell the brands apart. They were all trying to do the right thing in the same way. Then there's all of those homemade on Zoom ads, or those handheld ads. What those did, I think, quite interestingly, was to forget two really important elements of branding. One is the distinctive brand asset, all that we have put in to invest, whether we're a new brand or a long existing brand. The distinctive brand, and then you get more complicated, fluent devices that really separate and tease brands apart. Those appear to have been forgotten. I think we're seeing in the UK, in Europe, across the world, I think we're seeing as people get used to what the next normal might be like, they're remembering they do stand for something. As Haem said, putting out content that is useful, not by my product, but actually putting out content is useful. And as Patricia was saying, putting out content, branded storytelling content, that demonstrates that those brands have a role in the lives of consumers. I think talking human is this very rare dialect, particularly in the B2B sector, maybe particularly in the SME B2B sector, but talking human, remembering that the way that we as creatures make our decisions is emotionally. The cognitive psychologist Daniel Kahneman and many others, but we know that the way that we make decisions is emotionally. We make decisions with the limbic reptilian brain that we share with birds and mammals and snakes and crocodiles. That's how we make our decisions. The part of the brain that has no access to data or numbers or statistics or words, it's the non-verbal brain. We are an amazing species because we have this neocortex that enables us to justify our decisions rationally. When Patricia was talking about purpose, I was taken back to clearly to Simon Sinek and Start With Why and purpose. When he talks about his golden circle of starting why, of talking about why, then how, then what, rather than the other way around that so many companies have done, he maps that in that very first book, and also that very first TEDx talk from little old Puget Sound with his flip chart board. Think where he's moved. He maps that onto the decision-making brain. So we make our decisions emotionally and then justify them rationally. The emotional why and then the justification. So I think SMEs, all brands need to reflect, one, that they need to talk in a human way, in an empathetic way. Two, that they need to know that we make our decisions emotionally and we need to appeal in that way. Being true to yourself, being true to clearly to your purpose, pivoting, being useful if you can. It's not the end of globalization as we know it, but one book I went back to recently was Yuval Noah Harari's book Sapiens, that tells the story of the world and of humanity through the cognitive, the agricultural, the industrial, and now the digital revolutions. It's a brilliant book to read in a pandemic, because there's a lot of stuff that says, the hunter-gatherers not only had a shorter working day and less stress, but also they didn't have pandemics. They couldn't have pandemics because they operated in a different way. So I don't think it's the end of globalization. But if you think of the vectors of transmission of this and any other pandemic, it's going to make people introspect and shop locally. So, okay, in the UK recently, last weekend, pubs were opened again. And you may have seen some scenes in central London of great parties going on. And had they actually not realised that this thing could be passed? Well, actually, what many pubs have been doing during the pandemic is turning into local stores. So they've been bringing in the UK, they've been bringing in cheese and milk and vegetables that have been grown on farms that don't have the normal distribution levels of distribution, and they've become a focus for the community. It's not, okay, I know that the Brits have a difficult relationship with alcohol. Listen, I've got a doctorate in alcohol and emotional memory. I studied it for 4 years. I know that, but it's interesting to see, local bakeries. It's not the death of the supermarket, but actually people are shopping and behaving in a different way. And that gives SMEs, B2C and B2B, that gives them a huge opportunity. And I've seen many examples of kind of being true to yourself, getting people to shop and to think and to act locally. I mean, I think it's important. I mean, you know, the global economy is inevitably in recession. It couldn't not be. You need to have 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth in order to be in recession. There has to be a recession. How we bounce out of that, I think, is interesting. People are talking about the shape of letter it's going to be. The optimists are talking about the V-shaped recession where you go straight back up. But I think that there's a great opportunity for SMEs, partly with this local, partly with this talking human. The other thing I think is to reflect, having said that we make our decisions emotionally, we do justify them rationally. And of course, with the words narrative by numbers sitting over my shoulder, clearly I do think that numbers matter enormously, but they matter as the underpinning. So as SMEs look to recover and grow, I think they need to work out, well, one, how to use data in a human and an empathetic way, but what data points really matter? How can those be properly woven into the narratives that they build? So I don't think I've added very much. I don't think I probably answered your question about insight, but I am filled. I know different markets, different countries are at different points in this journey, but it's fascinating how it's all gone down to a national level. You know, even we've got 5.5 months, sadly, left in the UK of membership of the European Union. I don't want to even go there, but it's interesting that supranational organisations haven't had their day. But it's in all the statistics and all of the data that matters is about my country, my region, and it's interesting that after this enormous period of globalization, as Patricia was saying, and in the conversation with Karnvir at the end, the growth of Zoom. People aren't going to be invited to go to branding workshops in Malaysia to give a 15-minute presentation. Board meetings aren't going to happen in real life when you can get many more people. So interesting, changes happen. How can SMEs capitalize on those and work with what is the next normal?
No, that's absolutely true. I mean, change has happened, and I think we are seeing change right away. With even this kind of a conversation probably wouldn't have happened even a couple of months ago. A, it wouldn't have been possible, and B, it wouldn't have been even important enough. But suddenly, it is important enough, and we are actually there's localization as well as globalization, because we're suddenly being. There's suddenly something which is common to us all, from the UK to Brazil to Canada to South America to Malaysia. There's something common to us all for the first time, probably after the World War. This is the first time in history that there's something common to us all. So in a way, it has brought us together. In a way, it is bringing us apart. In a way, it is creating barriers, because there are countries who are saying that, we will only allow our own citizens to enter the country, and we won't, anybody. There's a whole stigma attached to it. I don't think the disease is actually that bad as much as the stigma, because the moment somebody is declared corona or COVID positive, there's a whole, the neighbors get scared, people, literally banish them, and there's a whole thing. So there are a few questions actually which I thought we should take in the middle, because last time we had a lot of questions, and we tried to do it at the end, but we ran out of time. So there's a question by Jayakar Joseph Johnson, who says that there is a proposal for a real-time global COV control program to UNIDO and UNDP, that is a collaborative program that provides digital tool framework. Anyway, I won't go into the details, but his question is, for digital healthcare products and services, he feels there won't be any brand if you want to fight COVID in solidarity. I think what he's trying to say is that, do brands really matter in the digital healthcare world and in the healthcare world, or is it just going to be a global initiative, across the world, which will be more important? Who would like to maybe we could have something by Haem, and then by Patricia and Sam to comment.
I think
just comment also.
Sorry, no, please go ahead, Patricia. Go ahead.
Yeah, Patricia, please.
No, very quickly. I just think that the world has changed because the audience and people has changed. So people are not sharing stories or even content because it belongs to a brand, but because it was interesting to them. So everything is changing. So we have, as brands, as partners of brands, we have to work finding the best way to be relevant and meaningful, adding values for sure, even talking about products, but we have to be talking about what matters to people. So the mindset should be different. Sorry, Haem, you please.
No, that's okay.
No, great point. Great point. Haem, what do you think? There won't be any brand if you want to fight against COVID?
I would disagree to that. I would disagree because I think it's a very binary way of looking at it. It's not binary. Branding is not binary. You can't just look at it as, oh, there is a brand and there isn't a brand, right? It's very important to understand that, like Patricia said, at this time, mindset matters. Your intention matters. So your intention cannot be, oh, let me use this time to profit and become the best brand possible and become viral. People will know, and pardon my language, but people will call you bullshit. Right? So you have to have the right intentions, and you have to move forward with the intention to help. Right? So when you do that, people will notice your brand. Say stories in the right way, like Sam before said, right? The human connection. Tell people stories, connect with them, understand your consumer. Once you do that in the right way, your brand will shine through. And I can tell you that, I can guarantee you that. But if you go forward with the intention of, let me see how much money I can make and how I can stand apart from this, you're just going into this the wrong way.
I think those are brilliant points. I just wanted to give you two examples of the way that a couple of brands have behaved under the situation. So this being useful. So there's an anarchic. It's an Anglo-American brand. It was started in Scotland. There's an anarchic brewer called Brewdog, and Brewdog announced they make a lot
to India.
Oh, cool. So they make a lot. So they announced very early on that they were going to make hand sanitizer gel for the Scottish National Health Service, and they produced a beautifully designed bottle that was very much with their brand values, and they made a big song and dance about it, and then they made the hand sanitizer gel and they gave it to the Scottish NHS, and the Scottish NHS said, do you know what? This is not the right grade for us. We can't use this. It's not going to work. LVMH, Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, they didn't make a great song and dance about it. They said, we have production plants that can make industrial hospital grade hand sanitizer gel. They made it. The label was hand typed on a typewriter. There was no branding involved. They were doing it because it was the right thing to do. Brewdog, however, when the mendacious, let me use that word, spin doctor Svengali of Dominic Cummings broke his own rules, drove to a place called Barnard Castle in the north of England. Brewdog created a special commemorative beer that was called Barnard Castle Eyesight Test Lager, which was completely on brand for them. It totally sold out, and it was the right thing to do, because here's this punk brand that was punching this guy who had broken his own rules. For them to try and make hand sanitizer gel without consulting the NHS on what it should be was a stupid thing to do. For them to behave in that anarchic way. Let me give you one other example. KFC launched a global campaign, but it was big. There was a very big launch in the UK at the end of February, which was all about licking your fingers, which was not a good thing to be seen to be saying. They pulled it very quickly, and then they did a brilliant thing when their stores were able to open for takeout and Deliveroo and the rest of it, when they were able to open, what they did was they went online and they found all of the videos that people had made saying they were missing KFC, and they were doing their handmade little, drawing the kernel on bags of fries, and the disappointing, soggy, grey skinned, it wasn't the authentic thing. So they showed half a dozen shots of that, and then it swept across and it said, "We'll take it from here." And the Colonel walked back in, and Yum Brands did all of the great marketing that they can do. And it was a great, what it did was, you remember I mentioned before, brands forgot to use distinctive brand assets. They forgot to use the fluent devices. What KFC did there was to take all of what had been happening online, people trying to recreate their restaurant experience, and then they said, actually, we can do this better. So having had a really bad start with their accidental timing for that campaign, they had a brilliant kind of follow-up going back. So I think it's interesting, being true to yourself. Both Haem and Patricia said being true to yourself, why you exist. I think that's so important.
No, absolutely. In
fact, I add one thing, Karnvir, just adding one thing to my two great guys here that just spoke. And Haem, she was saying that about the intention. Intention, in my opinion, is the new authenticity for brands, because we are all in the whole world hyper connected. Everyone is 24 hours online. So it's really clear. We know the truth behind the brand, and we are following them, checking every attitude, if this is a promise or if this is a true thing. So the audience knows when a brand is only promising and pretending to be something and not being true and relevant. And when I was saying before that brands must talk about social tensions, is that the power of good brand storytelling relies on truth and vulnerability. So brands that used to invest on advertising, they are investing in control. They control everything. They control the language. They control each person, each character that you see in an advertising ad is controlled. Is like he looks like the customer. So when we talk about brand storytelling, good brand storytelling and good branded content, we are talking about a strong vulnerability and truth. And a brand that decides to embrace a cultural, social tension is a bold brand that chooses to embrace human pain. Like Dove Sketch. Dove Sketch is talking about the self-esteem. It's a pain. It's a human pain. So truth and vulnerability is key to establish how good is that branded content. And
absolutely, truth and vulnerability is absolutely key to a brand. And in fact, one of the interesting incidents which happened in the recent past, in the few weeks, we got a call from a person who asked me, he asked me, what is public relations? And I tried to explain to him. And then he said, oh, we don't need public relations. We've invented a vaccine, and it's going to sell out to everybody in the world. Guess what? A few weeks later, I tried to explain to him that if you made the vaccine, and this was an SME, and I told him a few weeks later, all the big brands, the Pfizers of the world and the big companies of the world will also have vaccines. And then if you haven't connected to your customer, you will actually lose your standing in the market, even if you've come first. And kind of that's what happened. But so I feel in response that, I think brands will make a difference even in digital healthcare. But I want to go to the second question from Chandrasekhar, and he asked something which I would like Sam to answer actually. At what stage of starting a business the SME should consider brands?
From the very beginning. Absolutely from the very beginning. If you go, people start businesses, people start brands because they think they can change the world in some kind of way. We all start, whether we're a startup or a 150-year-old business, there is a purpose and a meaning well beyond making money. Making money is a consequence. Making money is a good consequence. It allows us to do things that we might otherwise not have been able to do. But if we're if we're candid with ourselves, and if we go through the processes of purpose discovery. I mean, frankly, many businesses, particularly startups and scale-ups, they don't need a structure of a workshop to do this. They know this intuitively and they talk about it. Maybe some slightly older businesses might have lost their way, or some older brands have lost their way. But I think from the very beginning, that doesn't mean you need to invest a lot of time or money or resource. You need a framework. You need to know what an expression of purpose and meaning looks like, how to verbalize, how to vocalize that, and then how to bring that to life through film, through logo. But I think from the very, very beginning, I would not leave it to chance. And that, I think, can kickstart and accelerate your growth, both in recovery periods, like we're all going to be going through in the next 18 months to 18 years, who knows how long, but in recovery periods, but also in relatively normal and stable periods if they ever come again. So right from the beginning would be my prescription.
Absolutely, right from the beginning. In fact, many times I tell brands or companies even before the beginning. So before you make the product, start doing your branding so that you actually understand what the customer really wants. Sometimes a little red light on the left side of the car is more valuable than all the stabilization and all the techniques that you've got inside. So, right from the beginning, before the beginning is something which definitely not when you have gone 6 months, 2 years into product development, you have the product on the shelf, it's not selling, and then you decide to do public relations or brand communication. So, Haem, you had a point?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Sam said. Absolutely agree that it's right from the beginning. And what I want is, remember this, products will come and go. Today, what is relevant as a product may not be what's relevant tomorrow. But if your brand is strong enough, and if you know your consumer, if you know what you stand for, you can come up with another product or modification that will still work because your core essence was built before. So that's very important to understand.
Absolutely. Patricia, this question I think is just up your street. Do you think it is, one attendee asks, and it's an anonymous attendee for some reason, but he says, do you think it's essential to outsource the branding responsibility to a third party or hire someone internally? And I think because, you probably are managing a lot of brands, externally. So I don't know if it would be a biased opinion, but try to be neutral and suggest whether the person should hire it to your company if they come to Brazil, or try to manage it internally.
I'm not sure if I got the question.
Should you outsource branding to a third party? Should you outsource branding, or should you manage it internally in the company? Should you have an internal brand manager, or should you have an ad agency, an external company?
I do believe that as a brand, the brands are controlling everything. And now it's a good moment to talk about control at this moment, because they are creating like content studios. For example, a few months ago, a very important CMO who used to spend a lot in good branded content, brand storytelling, Linda Buff from GE, she said, I want to be a showrunner. When she was saying this, she was explaining that bringing creative people, content people, people from production companies, and creating a very talented group of people who really understand how to brief, how to approve, and how to guarantee that the whole production and creative process will respect what is essential to create meaningful branded content and meaningful storytelling. Because brands used to approve and to think and to brief with a very old mindset, completely oriented to advertising, to buy impact, to buy media, not to create meaningful stories and deeper and meaningful and relevant conversations with the audience. So it's a different way to think and a different way to hire people. And I do believe that it's a very good moment to see more content studios coming up inside the brands, because they save money, they save time, because brands are so, let me use a good word, a light word. So they are so sick. They are just like here with the whole and long and expensive process that traditional agencies and older partners used to work, because the system is very a business old model. It's not oriented to bring the clients inside the process. When I work here with all brands, and I have created and produced it too, and started from the beginning working on as a consultant and a strategic consultant for brands. So for Heineken, where we could create and produce a very meaningful documentary, to Itaú Bank in Brazil, our biggest bank in Brazil, the doc series with Guga, the famous tennis player, the seasons that we have produced to Natura and Avon, to Nestlé, and all this stuff. These projects, they were completely different, and I have worked before in my life on the agency side. So we have tried to change the process. So the client is essential from the beginning to the end, as a team, as a part of the team, not someone who is waiting after the briefing 2 months to get the result of that briefing. So we have to change everything. We have to establish a new process, a new creative process with the client, even if they are not preparing their teams to be more creative and to be more content oriented, just like Linda Boff said. But if they are more open minds to work with different, for example, in Brazil, there is a very traditional market. I have a very good example. It's a huge company, but Johnson & Johnson have asked to a TV to create and produce a documentary with 52 minutes talking about the menstruation taboo for girls around India, around Africa, around Brazil and South America and US. And girls talking about, during 52 minutes in the documentary, about how hard it is to explain to people how normal is their period time. So the brand didn't ask to the agency. The brand has the courage enough to establish a new process and a new model, even without a content studio inside the company, but asking to the TV. And the TV was different, and they didn't get back like a very old planning with media buying stuff, buying breaks, instead of just a good brand storytelling. So everything is being changed. And I do believe that is being changed by brands with a new mindset.
I mean, I think one of the things that has come about, Sam, would you like to add something to that?
Sorry to, I think that's a really, really interesting perspective, and that J&J case study is really strong. I think it's much harder for SMEs without maybe big brands or a family of brands to justify in the investment in that creative in-house. But what a great solution from J&J that Patricia talks about. I completely agree that this constant involvement and co-creation rather than brief and bring us something brilliant is great. Unilever, I mean, has done fantastic work through youth studios globally, through the development of that for creating particularly agile content, particularly digital content. The history of Cheel and Samsung, I think, has been pretty good overall. However, the word of warning comes in the Pepsi Kendall Jenner Black Lives Matter ad from a few years ago, which was, I mean, if you go online, it's very hard to find that ad now. It's really easy to find the Saturday Night Live spoof of the director calling all of his friends and his family and then random people about what a bad idea that was. You know, there is this thing about, you know, drinking your own Kool-Aid. Some people might say smoking your own dope, that actually if you do have everything in-house and you don't have that internal perspective, you can produce something as catastrophic as that beautifully shot, very well intentioned, awfully delivered piece of work. So I agree with, and I love that example from J&J, but it's worth having that external perspective so that you don't shoot yourself in the foot.
So thank you. I mean, I think that was an amazing discussion. You know, we have a few actually more questions, and I have been given a few more minutes by the organizers, so we can take a few more questions. This is just up Haem's Street, and the question is about working with brands, and it is that from the panel's experience, how easy is it to work with SMEs? Do you think it's always possible? Do you think it's always better or more rewarding to work for large companies and ignore small companies? I think this is from a secret advertising guy, because he's anonymous. I think he doesn't, but Haem would be able to talk about this a little bit more, because I think you've had a lot of experience with both sides of the coin. You're muted.
I was muted. Yes, I've had experiences on both sides, and when someone asks me, I always say there is merit in both. The amount of learnings that you get from each side, right? When you are with a small company, you are sort of doing everything. You're learning everything. You're learning not just what your role is, but what every other person's role is. And I think that's very, very important. Because today, when I consult with brands, or when I do my job, or when I talk to anyone, the reason I have perspective is because I have seen how other departments work. So I can sit here and say, hey, yes, I'm talking about branding, but I do know how finance works. And I do know how you're thinking about operations. So let's think about it together, and let's find a solution that works for everyone. You cannot remain in silos. On the other hand, bigger brands have the perspective of scale. That's also really important. You need to understand how things work on a larger scale. You need to understand how to navigate systems, which is not something with a smaller brand, right? You know who the boss is, you work directly with the boss, and you can get stuff done after a point. But with bigger brands, you have to navigate levels. You have to navigate approvals, which means you need to know how to formalize things.
Can you be creative in the big brand?
You can, you absolutely can. Again, it's understanding how, right? You have to be someone who understands. Again, if you understand people, that's one thing I pride myself in, that I understand people. I understand not just the consumer, but also who my bosses are, and who my company is, and who my other team members are. Once you understand them, you know how to navigate that, and you know how to be creative. If you can't just be creative going, this is a great idea, let's do it. No, you have to understand, in a big company, there is business. So how do I take that big creative idea and make it such that can be sold to someone with a business perspective? Sell it internally. Take that creative and show why it's effective, why it's important, right? And that's an art that you learn at a big company. At a smaller company, you learn that art of, okay, I take that creative, but how can I make it happen without any resources? I don't have money. What do I do? Right? How do I scrounge about for open source software and do something else and find, things online that I can do myself and make it happen? So that's a smaller company learning. Bigger company.
So you learn techniques at smaller companies and techniques of managing people at bigger companies.
I think so. That's one way to put it. It's a very small way of looking at it, but yes, that's one way to put it, right? You learn perspective at smaller companies, and then you learn, management at a larger company. I think that's a better way to put it. And creativity is everywhere. Creativity is what you make of it and how you bring it forth in the situation. So it doesn't matter where you are, you can still be creative.
Okay. So you can be creative, but you have to manage people in larger companies.
Absolutely. That's the world, right? Yeah. You have to manage your clients, you have to manage your team. learn how to be with people. Otherwise, it's not going to work. You learn to manage consumers, you learn to manage your team.
So I'll take one last question, which because we are running a bit over time, and the last question is an often asked question, so everybody could give their 2 minutes on it. The question is from Lakshmi Narayan, who asked, "Is there ethics in branding?" I think this is a very oftenly asked question, but still, since it is questions which are often asked, probably need to be often answered. So I'll start with Patricia, and she can give us her 2 minutes on how do you manage ethics in branding. And then we'll go to Haem and Sam.
It's a huge challenge because that's why I keep saying that mindset is everything. When a brand decides to change how they get money, because if you are talking about something that is more purposeful and people-oriented, you are telling a story that is not about you. You are telling a story that is about people. So it's a change of perspective and in terms of mindset also. So it's very important to be ready to have a deeper conversation, sometimes with less results, with less sales, but gain ahead, because you are creating and building stronger relationships between brands and people. So you the many examples that I have been seeing on Instagram, for example, here in Brazil, that are amazing. We can see like small brands achieving more than 40% of increase on online sales. So they are getting during the pandemic like more 1,000 or 2,000 new customers because of the meaningful and relevant talks and new contents and new ways to relate to people and how to reach people's connections and hearts. So we have to be open to be more meaningful, and brands are proving that they can gain more money if they are being more relevant, meaningful, and talking about truth. You can see this with huge brands, for example, with P&G talking through always brands.
So branding, so being meaningful and ethical does make a difference. Sam, what's your opinion is on do ethics matter in branding?
They matter enormously. Be true to yourself, be true to your purpose, understand what your current and potential consumers want from you and how your product and service can properly impact in their lives. And if you're not, if you say one thing and do another, you will be found out, you will be called out, and that will have a permanent trace online. And that will, almost without doubt, that will mean that your business plan, however ambitious it was before, is going to be diverted and blown off course. So yeah, it really matters. And I'm not talking about companies need to be goody and purer than pure. I mean, they need clearly not to pollute, and they need clearly to have a diversity policy that means something. So I think when I think it was Haem was talking about the importance of, if you're going to make a stand on Black Lives Matter, make sure that your policy stacks up. I mean, Apple was called out. I am the world's #1, well, after Simon Sinek, Apple fan. But when they posted on Instagram Black Lives Matter, what was posted after that was the board, and there wasn't a black face on the board. So, make sure what you say aligns with what you actually do.
No, absolutely. In fact, one of the very interesting examples, I think, is a public relations firm which used to work in South Africa, which actually had to wind up operations because of its unethical work, and it is one of the biggest examples of a brand. It was one of the largest public relations firms in the world, and because of one incident, which they started, working for a certain group. They actually had to wind up operations, and that firm, which was one of the largest in the world, doesn't exist anymore. So definitely, ethics are key to any brand, and with that, I think we're pretty much out of time. In fact, one of my sections, which I wanted to do 2 sections, but we probably couldn't do the second section. But maybe we will try to take on those topics in episode 3 with the next panelist. But I hand it now to Mr. Nair, who is from the WTC, and Mr. Nair, it's all yours for your concluding remarks.
Thanks, Karnvir. Thanks, Sam, Haem, and Pat. It was really, thank you very much for sparing your time in the early morning for Pat and Haem. And it was really very interesting subject and very well attended. Even the participants also raised quite a number of questions. Just to conclude, when we are looking for a long-term benefit part of it, yes, we should invest in branding. In reality, branding acts as an effective catalyst for business growth in today's market. That is to be kept in mind. A good branding exercise builds trust, encourages loyalty, and increases value. Thank you very much for sharing your valuable inputs. Thank you to all the participants. Thanks to my colleague, Vivek, Sandeep, Mohan for organizing this program. Thanks once again, Karnvir, for organizing this program. Thank you very much. I think I have a participant from WTC Vasa, Mr. Torrell is online. Thank you. Thank you, Torrell.
Thank you all.
Thank you.